Hello friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag, and it is mid-June, so it's not quite 6 months through the year, but I saw Angela from Literature Science Alliance post this tag and I got really excited about it because this is one of my favorite tags. I had a lot of fun doing it last year and I love watching other people's versions of it too. I think that the questions are really fun, and I always see people being like, I'm not freaking out, you know, why is it called the mid-year freakout tag? And for me, I interpret that as me freaking out about my inability to answer the questions because I am bad at choosing anything. So even choosing my favorite book from the first half of the year is difficult for me. But that's just my own weakness that we're talking about here. Whenever somebody asks me like what my favorite movie is, I forget that I've ever seen any movies in my life, and that's just me. So with that said, I do have a lot of fun doing this tag, so I'm gonna get right into it. And the first question is, of course, the best book you've read so far in 2022. And I decided to do the same thing as Angela in that I will not answer this question with a sequel or a book from later in a series because of the second question. And I decided to answer this question because I couldn't choose with two books, one fantasy and one not fantasy. So the non-fantasy book that I chose as my favorite of 2022 so far is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I listened to this on audiobook and I loved it enough that I went right out and bought myself a physical copy of it just because I wanted to have it in my collection. I immediately fell in love with it. And I know that this book is extremely popular and has a lot of hype, and I don't really want to add to that too much because I know how going into a super hyped book can feel, and if it disappoints you then that can hurt a little bit because you've heard that so many other people love it. But for me, the strengths of this book were what I wasn't expecting from it, and there are things that I actually can't talk about because I wouldn't want to spoil the relationships in the book, but there are some things that I think just have to be discovered about The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo as you read it. But my favorite thing was the retrospective style in which Evelyn Hugo is telling her story, and the forthrightness and honesty in the telling and the way that the emotions are approached in that book, all really, really strong, and yeah, I loved it. The fantasy pick for the best book that I've read so far in 2022, first of all, I'm going to completely acknowledge recency bias here because I'm going to pick The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, which is the author duo of Marie Brennan and Alice Helms. And I finished this book today, and I get that it is still super fresh in my brain, and that is probably wiping out a bunch of other emotions that I felt for other books. But I was looking at my list of books that I had read this year, and a lot of other books that I loved were sequels, so I'm not using them for this question anyway. But I was looking at my list and I was just thinking well, no, I didn't like that more than Mask of Mirrors. I also didn't like that more than Mask of Mirrors. So it belongs in this slot, even if I did just finish it. I was really impressed with Mask of Mirrors. It's so intricate and complex, but I thought the magic system and the world building were both extremely cool. And I didn't always understand everything, but it was in the sense that I could get so much more from it on reread, and I could see that it was thought through, and I wasn't necessarily absorbing every single detail. It wasn't that there were plot holes or things that hadn't been thought through. It was just that you would need to maybe have a second pass to fully absorb what was going on, and I don't mind that. I know that that will not appeal to some people. It does take a little bit of brain power to read this book, but I've always been someone who loved a heist or a con story and some political intrigue, and it has all of it, and I really liked the characters too and their journeys throughout, and it's just, there's so much to love, and I did love it. The second question is the best sequel you've read in 2022 so far, and honestly, this book doesn't have a shred of competition, and that is Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb. I could have picked The Mad Ship as well, but Ship of Destiny was just such a stunning conclusion to the Live Ship Traders, and I almost view that trilogy as one big long book, because while there were climactic events at the end of each book, the story really just like fits itself all together, and it is one big experience. And Live Ship Traders is absolutely one of my favorite series now of all time. I can't say enough about her character building and the intricacies of the world and like the nautical setting and everything, like the emotions. Robin Hobb, like the emotions that she takes you through. My poor heart went straight through the ringer in the past like month and a half reading these books. And like other things pale in comparison, but that's one reason that I have a feeling of how good Mask of Mirrors was, because I read Mask of Mirrors and Ship of Destiny at a very similar time, and like both of them are total standouts. They're different enough that I could separate them and I wasn't directly comparing them to each other, but they were both just so phenomenal. So June has been a standout reading month for me so far, and both of these are recent, but they're both just so good that they deserve to have these spots. The third question is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to. And for this, I'm going to go with another book that I'm planning to read in the month of June, and that is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, which is a short novel, or maybe a novella, that is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And so this has a killer cover. It like definitely seems like it's gonna have creepy horror vibes. I mean, that's what it's meant to be, and I think that I'm going to really like it. I think it's gonna be a quick read as well, and I'm hopeful to have a review up for that one as well, because it is an arc that I have from NetGalley. So that is a new release that I am really looking forward to. And then question 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And for this one, I am choosing Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I'm sure that is going to be a popular choice, especially because of her Poppy War series, which like seems to have taken the booktube world by storm in the book community a few years ago when I wasn't on booktube yet or aware of any of this. And I'm not sure if R.F. Kuang's Poppy War trilogy appeals to me really. It is on my radar, and it might be something that I read eventually, but in the short term, it's not something that I have plans to read. But Babel, it seems extremely interesting, because it's going to be like a dark academia, historical fantasy, like commentary on British imperialism and colonialism, and like intertwined with magic, and like definitely a commentary on a lot of very interesting and relevant things. So this one is very appealing to me, and even though I haven't read her before, it is one that I'm super excited about. Question 5 is my biggest disappointment so far, and I kind of hate answering this question the way that I'm about to answer it, but I'm going to explain my answer. So my biggest disappointment was Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson, and this is a self-published book, and I don't want to direct anyone away from it. So I'm going to explain. Basically, I had seen some pretty glowing reviews for this, and after reading the synopsis and like the concept, I thought that this was going to be a new favorite for me. I was so confident that I was going to like love it. It was going to be 5 stars, and it was going to be like one of the standouts of the year. So this is a disappointment in the sense that it was a rather average book for me. I was right about how the concept appealed to me, and I thought that the magic was really interesting, and that there are a lot of dark aspects where you can have a lot of commentary on how having powers can corrupt, and I still think that there is a lot of potential there. But unfortunately, like a lot of the execution in the sense of character work and writing style and dialogue, that sort of thing just wasn't clicking, and it wasn't really allowing me to connect to the book. So I'm gonna continue with the series. Like whenever there is a sequel in that series, I am most likely gonna pick it up. But that's it. Like it ended up being average for me when I was so convinced that I was gonna love it. And that's why it's a disappointment. Not because this is like a book with no redeeming qualities. It's definitely not that. But it is my clear answer for this question because of that. Question 6 is the biggest surprise, and for this I chose Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey, and that's because this is an audiobook that I sort of just picked up on a whim when I saw that it was available on Libby, and I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, but it really blew me away. It's a super atmospheric book. It deals with nature, it deals with the emotions of humans, and it even involves sort of like a murder mystery. It's set in the Scottish Highlands, and it's a story about trying to rewild those lands with wolves. And it deals with a lot of heavy emotional stuff, but it relates it to like the nature of humans and nature itself in really interesting ways. And it was just like really, really well done in my opinion. Question 7 is favorite new author, which means debut or new to you. And this is new to me because it's absolutely not a new author in terms of being a debut. She has been around for a long time, and that is Octavia E. Butler, because I have been wanting to get into her works for quite some time now, and I read Kindred last month, and that is just an extremely impactful book. I talk more about it in my May wrap-up, but it's essentially the story of a modern, as in from the 1970s, Black woman who is drawn back in time to the antebellum South to save this boy, and this keeps happening to her, and she's trying to figure out why she's getting drawn back to this time. She's also trying to navigate the time that she does spend there, because as a Black woman it's a very dangerous place for her to be, and it's a very thematically rich book, and it has a lot of exploration of the time that she is being drawn back to in terms of the state of slavery and what Black people experienced then, and how that impacts her in terms of like when she goes back to her own time. And yeah, Octavia E. Butler is phenomenal, and I'm really looking forward to getting into more of her stuff, but she was a new to me author in the first half of this year, so that is my favorite. Question 8 is newest fictional crush or favorite romance. And this question is newest fictional crush, but Angela decided to answer it with favorite romance, and I really liked that idea because I don't know that I would know how to answer with a favorite fictional crush this year. But I definitely have a romance that I really enjoyed, and I was trying not to double up on my answers here, but regardless, I am going to go with Althea Bestrit and Brashen Trell from the Live Ship Traders series, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there is a romantic plotline between the two of them, because it does like start in the first book, and I'm not going to say anything about how it progresses or how it turns out like at all, but they are just in general one of my favorite relationships. I really enjoyed how they interacted and like how they each grow as characters and what we see from them. And I think it's just like an ode to Robin Hobb's phenomenal character writing, so that is my favorite from the first half of this year. Question 9 is my newest favorite character, and again, I could put characters from Live Ship Traders here, but there are so many that I could possibly say that I didn't really feel like one of them stood out head and shoulders above the rest from that series. So I decided that I would go with Vazia, our protagonist from the Winter Night trilogy. And I did read The Bear and the Nightingale in December, but it's close enough to the start of this year that I finished out the trilogy this spring, and that finishing the trilogy and like the story as a whole really is what cemented Vazia as a favorite character for me. She is a standout in that series. She like has such cool development, and really I felt like the overwhelming sense of being really proud of her and her development, and yeah, it's a fantastic trilogy, and she kind of carries it on her back. Like, there are other great characters, don't get me wrong, but that is an example of a series where your protagonist is truly your protagonist. It's less of an ensemble cast and more of a focus on Vazia, and she is fantastic. Question 10 is a book that made you cry, and I have decided that it is really not productive for me to actually answer this question because the majority of books make me cry. Like, if I love them and they have like connected me to their stories and they have emotional elements, it is vastly likely that I'm gonna shed a few tears. So like, I can't answer it because it's like every book makes me cry. Question 11 was a book that made you happy, and for this one I picked Feet of Clay by Terry Pratchett, which is the third book in the Discworld City Watch subseries. And Feet of Clay was a fun murder mystery, and I thought that it was one that, well, I gave it 5 stars. It was the perfect balance of the commentary that Terry Pratchett was trying to make with his comedy and like a really engaging plot, and that book was just like extremely fun to read. Question 12 is the favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year. And first of all, I do have a bad memory for like remembering the things that I watch. I should probably start keeping a list. Like, I remember books a lot better than I remember the movies and shows that I've watched, but I don't think that I've watched a book to film adaptation this year. And I'm planning to, but I don't think I have yet, so I don't have an answer for this one. Question 13 is my favorite video that I've done so far this year, and there are various videos that I have like put work into, whether those are my stats videos that I've done my own research on, or my spoiler chat videos where I enjoy talking about books, but I'm gonna go with my favorite one being the joint book haul that I did with Ben from when he visited Canada in March. And that's just because that one brings me so much joy. Like, if I watch it back, it brings me back the feeling that we had fun making it, and that it was from like when we were spending time together, which is the last time that he was able to visit here. And it's just like warm and fuzzy feelings. So that's my favorite. Question 14 is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received as a gift. And I think that I'm gonna go with the Winter Night Trilogy hardcovers for this one because I find those books so gorgeous. They look so good in hardcover, and each cover is different, but it's got its own like title placement and cover art that fits together so well as a series and really represents what's inside the book, while also just being so beautiful. Like, I love the style, so that is my choice. And then the final question, number 15, is which books do you need to read by the end of the year? And like, let's be honest, the answer is all of them. But I decided to pick 2 things, and that is to finish The Wheel of Time, which I am very close to doing finally. I have 2 books left, and I'm hopefully gonna finish it in July. But if it flips over like a little bit later, it's okay, but hopefully next month is when I'll be done, which is crazy to think about how long that journey has been. And then the second one that I picked is the City Watch series of Discworld, because I am buddy reading that with Ben, and in July we are going to get back into buddy reading that with The Fifth Elephant, and so that is 3 more books, I believe, that we have to go in that series, which is very doable. And so I have other series that I'm in the middle of or have just kind of started, but in terms of ones that I am like waist deep into and really would like to finish by the end of this year, those are the 2 main ones that come to mind. So that is the mid-year freakout tag where Grace is forced to choose things and suffers, but I hope you liked my answers. I still had fun with this. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. You can leave me your answers if you feel like it, but also if you have a channel, I'm really looking forward to seeing your version of this video because, like I said, I love watching people do this. It is one of my favorites. So that is it for this one. Please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday. As always, I have links to my joint Discord, socials, and Patreon down in the description if you would like to check that out. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!